Jonathan Taylor, running back for the Colts. So before we get into this, let Nick explain himself first of why he took Jonathan Taylor, why he thinks our viewers should take Jonathan Taylor. And then if one of you guys or myself, we could say, hey, I kind of greatly disagree. Nick, tell people why that you took Jonathan Taylor at number 3 here.
I just freaked out and just took him on accident.
I'm a big Colts fan.
I get so nervous when I'm on the clock.
Yeah.
You're so sweaty.
I just really like the landing spot. I think, my comp for him has always been a Nick Chubb-like player. And I don't think he's going to catch 50, 60, 70 receptions like some of these other backs, but he's going to have a floor, I think, of 1,200 rushing yards a year, which is similar to what I think Chubb's going to do. And when he's behind Quentin Nelson and that amazing offensive line, I mean, they've been ranked 3rd in PFF rankings each of the last 2 years. And when you do that, and Marlon Mack has been relevant, and Marlon Mack's not even close to the same player as Jonathan Taylor. He's worked on his receiving ability, and with his rushing style as well, he's a player, and me and Garrett have talked about this on different podcasts, where he needs to have a good offensive line because his designed hole is where he cuts off, similar to Adrian Peterson. He's not going to cut it all the way back across the grain and be super dynamic and creative behind the line. He's going to go to the designed hole and then try and get downhill really quickly. And with a good offensive line, there's going to be a hole there most of the time. And this is a really, really ideal situation. So for me, this is a safer pick than some other options that Rich might be wrong about. And I think that when you pair that with, I don't think the division's going to be super good long-term. I think that it's a really, really good situation for him to be ahead in games, close out games, and get lots of yards and points.
Yeah, I think this is a really great situation for Jonathan Taylor. Absolutely fantastic. Couldn't find a better landing spot for Jonathan Taylor. But I tell you what, you could find a better landing spot for another player, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire for the Kansas City Chiefs. So not only would I have taken Jonathan Taylor here, he's not my number 1 running back. And you mentioned he's a floor 1,200-yard rushing guy, but we all our leagues are PPR leagues. So even though that floor, let's take his floor and bump it up a notch and say he's that league leading rusher like Derrick Henry last year. But where was Derrick Henry's biggest hamstring? It was he didn't catch footballs like Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor has a 16% drop rate in the passing game. He's not going to catch a lot of footballs out there. I think he's the best pure runner in this class. I love his 3rd-ranked offensive line, even though J.K. Dobbins went behind the 2nd-ranked offensive line. But he's not going to catch footballs. Even when Derrick Henry led the league in rushing and had one of the best years he could possibly have, he was still running back 7 on the year. In PPR leagues, you got to get that stability. So if you look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Nick, and you just take his total yardage, say he catches about 700 yards, 800 yards, and rushes for 900, he's at 1,600 yards without those PPR reception points, which could probably be right around in that 60 to 80 range, which is going to vault him up to that running back 4. We're going to wait to talk about Clyde Edwards. Again, I'm happy with any of these running backs. I think my biggest beef here would be just not taking Justin Herbert because like we said, getting those running backs, I think if Justin Herbert pans out, you can get a better running back than Jonathan Taylor. You can get a proven guy that's going to be top 6, top 5, where I like Jonathan Taylor. I just think he's always going to be right around running back 8, running back 9. Maybe if he scores enough touchdowns, he could get that running back 3, 4. But without that pass catching ability, that worries me a little bit some. On top of his fumbling rate, where he did that consistently in Wisconsin. I remember watching a Purdue game where he fumbled twice, and one of the times, nobody even touched the guy. Matt, what do you think about Nick taking Jonathan Taylor here?
Can I rebuttal this?
At 3.
God, let the guy rebuttal, Rich. No,
I will let you rebuttal, Nick.
I thought it was a little bit high for me. Obviously, I love the spot as well. The offensive line there is amazing. I don't want to beat the dead horse here and say all the same things, but it's a little bit high for me. I'm with you as far as I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire higher than him. I actually have J.K. Dobbins higher than him as well. So it wouldn't be my pick, but go ahead, Nick, get your rebuttal in.
Yeah, so just like the debate we had with Burrow and with Tua, my philosophy is I want to have players with a bigger sample size. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who was in my first tier, I was fairly alone. I think not most people had him in their top tier of players prior to the draft, is a guy that I like. But he's done it for 1 year at LSU with elite production, and he's knocked out of some games. Jonathan Taylor didn't miss a game in college. So when you want to combine a couple of things there, when you're worried with the Derrick Henry RB7 or that RB9 range, that's pretty safe. I mean, can you guys really see a lot of likely scenarios where Taylor's out of the top 12 running backs, 14, 15 running backs in any year.
Maybe he doesn't score a lot of touchdowns. These PPR guys get a bump. And you mentioned the word safe, though, Nick, I think Clyde Edwards' pass catching ability is where he gets that safety net from. Like, can we all agree that Clyde Edwards is probably one of the best pass catching running backs in this class?
Oh, he is. Him and Swift.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, and I know it is you're right. It's a small sample size, but that sample size was a beautiful size. And if Andy Reid, who's consistently got high production out of these running backs, any running back, I mean, he made Damian Williams, of all people, get drafted 55 rounds in a 30-round mock draft higher than he should have got drafted. So for me, look what he did with Kareem Hunt his rookie year coming out of Toledo. He had 1,300 yards rushing. And this is before Pat Mahomes was MVP and Super Bowl champion and Tyreek Hill was the GOAT. So even before that, Kareem Hunt in that offense rushed for 1,300 yards. He had 50 receptions for 500 yards or 30 receptions for 500 yards, had 11 total touchdowns, which is like running back 4 on the year. And Clyde Edwards can be equal to Kareem Hunt. Again, it's not always about, is this player that good? I think we've said this before in a podcast and on the show is Alvin Kamara the best pure runner in the class? Absolutely not. Jonathan Taylor's the best pure runner in this class, 100%. But Alvin Kamara is in the best scheme and the best system to optimize his skill set, which makes him a first-round dynasty startup player. That's the difference. I'm not looking for the best running back. I'm looking for the player that's going to score me the most fantasy points, and I think that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But even got going there, we're arguing running backs here, Nick, is I still would have taken Justin Herbert, but that's neither here nor there. Garrett, what do you think of Nick's terrible pick?
I was worried you weren't going to let me talk about this at all because
thanks, Garrett, for chiming in. We're going to move.
I'm with Nick on this. I'm with Nick. Jonathan Taylor did end up as my RB1. Now, it's truly, truly splitting hairs. I literally put all of 3 of these guys, including Dobbins, all 3 of them back to back to back in my overall rankings. I mean, they are literally all that close. They all landed in the perfect spot for their specific skill sets. And that was my thing. Jonathan Taylor was my RB3 before this. But I said, if he ends up in San Francisco or if he ends up with the Colts, he'll probably move to my RB1. And that's exactly what happened. He did move up to my RB1. And the other thing is, we're talking about Taylor like there's no chance he will ever develop in the passing game. You know, we've seen this out of Wisconsin backs before where they just really aren't used in the passing game. So I'm not saying he will, because if he stays as is, he's pretty safe as a top 12 guy. But I think the reason they drafted him is they do view him as a guy that could be on the field for all 3 downs, because Marlon Mack was fine between the tackles. He just didn't really have anything else. So I think they view this as a guy that could potentially develop into that, just like Melvin Gordon did. James White's one of the best pass-catching backs in the league, and he wasn't used like that in Wisconsin. So I'm not saying he can do it, but I'm saying even if he doesn't develop that, he's still an RB1. If he does develop into even a 40 or 50 catch guy, all of a sudden we are talking about that top 5 running back range.
Yeah, but he doesn't run out. So you're talking about manufactured touches and receptions, kind of like Leonard Fournette last year in Jacksonville, which isn't really overly sustainable. Again, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it if his drop rate wasn't so high when he was actually utilized in the passing game. If his efficiency in the passing game was, there. Like DeAndre Swift didn't have a high production in the passing game, but he was very efficient when he was utilized, where Jonathan Taylor just wasn't efficient even when called upon. So, but you're right, Garrett, we're splitting hairs because I love Jonathan Taylor too. In non-superflex, he's my 1-2. Probably bump after this conversation because I'm getting so hyped up about it to my 1-3 behind J.K. Dobbins. But again, we're splitting hairs. Like, The fact that if you get any 4 of these top-end running backs, you could throw Cam Akers in as 5 of them, your dynasty team is better because of it.